So what type of world building did you focus on for the Windshine Chronicles? What did you focus on most?
I was a little bit lucky because since I live in Korea, like I said, I mentioned before, I lived there for 14 years. And so I'm very familiar with the culture of Korea. But this takes place in the medieval version of Korea, so it's maybe, 400 years ago. And require a lot of research, actually. I mean, luckily, there's things I looked up online to read, but I mean, there are museums, plenty of museums. It's like a common thing in Korea to have villages that are like it was in the medieval ages, and people actually still live there. And so I've actually have gone to the villages.
Cool.
I've gone to the forts where the kings would live, or the governors really would live. I also went to the palace where the king would live, where the king lived. This is in Seoul. And so it was, I will say though, in writing the Windshine Chronicles, that the most difficult part was trying to make it as the historical elements as accurate as possible. That actually, like I would be writing a scene, and then when it's like people talking, that goes very fast. Any kind of action goes very fast. Any kind of movement goes very fast. But when it comes to just describing the setting of where they actually are at the time, I would probably write maybe a paragraph a day, like maybe all of 100 words. It was actually really tedious. It was really tedious. But that's for me, since I actually lived there, it was a combination of going online to confirm certain things, like going to nuance, but also just walking through old style villages in Korea and going to the forts, the temples, and then the palace. And so
That's really cool. I'm just curious, like when it did come to research, like because I know sometimes I get stuck with this with like I have like my urban fantasy and I'm doing a lot of research. I teach history, it's my degree and stuff, but like there's so many extra things that I might have to research. So I'm kind of curious that when you did have to do your research, what were some of like the methods or maybe some of the tools that you use to do that type of research?
it was mostly if it wasn't in person, so actually going to the museum and seeing how like armor would look in Korea, how swords would look. In Jeju, it's an island. I know people who listen to this don't know what it looks like, but anyway, it's an island. And they removed it, a boat, like one of those turtle boats, completely constructed near the water, near the boardwalk or the wharf or wherever. And so walking around there, seeing what the wood is like, but beyond that, I mean, there's plenty of material. And also, I since I was teaching in Korea, I actually had to, in order to teach the kids, I would read Korean history. It was in English, of course. I was an English teacher there. English is a second language, and so there were also like these different historical things that would be part of the lessons I was supposed to teach the kids. They had all these like these old games that used to be played during different holidays, like Chuseok and Sonal. And so I really did learn honestly from my students, from the kids, what
Cool.
the culture of people were like back in the day. So again, luckily, like if I was writing from about like right now, I'm reading a book that took place in historical Paris, in historical France. And if you haven't been there, that means you're just, you're having to do all this research not to really get it right if you really want to get it right. But luckily, I lived in the country that I wrote about for, a decade and a half. And so for me, the research as a result was actually a little bit easier.